the first thing is thinking about how do I build competency? How do I be employable so that people actually want to employ me? And it's not just like, oh, I'm going around like begging for jobs to be here today. I'm going to talk about becoming employable, putting your best foot forward, and communicating your value. I Yeah, the whole thing is talk about like CVs and interviews and all of that, but I thought like really sort of being able to like understand the reason why, the reason behind having a good CV and having like, a good LinkedIn profile and what the essence of interviews are. I thought were captured in like these three statements. Um, Going into tech, I think is a very like popular thing now. And I wanted to start from like becoming employable because I thought there's a lot of like talk about sort of almost getting like shortcuts into tech. So you get into tech, you land this, like amazing role, you earn amazing money, and then you just like go from company to company, just like earning more money and getting stocks. And all of that is great. But the first step, and I think the most important is actually thinking about how do I become employable. If you're on this call, I believe that you're already making steps towards that, which is good. And if you're part of like the mentorship program as well, I think that that's a good, sign that you're actually thinking about this. As a person, I value like, being excellent in my work. And even, if you hear me speak or if you see me, if you, read my articles, there's a lot of emphasis on like actually being excellent rather than just like trying to find shortcuts through tech. So the first thing I would say that you need to do is to understand the chosen career path. So I guess, some of you here are going through like the front end mentorship, back end mentorship, QA mentorship. Do you really understand like what that entails, right? Is the first place I would say you should start from. So do your research, read company career blogs. Some of them talk about like the kind of work that they're doing, read job ads. I think my favorite thing to do, honestly, on LinkedIn is actually to read job applications, like job adverts. And I like to read them because I try to like assess myself based on like the actual path I want to go. So for example, say my goal is to be like a VP in engineering. I read as many of them as possible just to sort of see, am I actually like in line with what these people are asking for? Are there things that I need to work towards in order to be able to become a VP of engineering? So that's something I try to do in my spare time. Even when I'm not looking for work, I just try to make sure that I'm keeping up with what the industry wants, and actually understanding what sort of opportunities I need to be looking for, even in my current role. So for example, if for me to like grow to the next step of my career, I need to, let's say, be leading one team, for example. It means that even in my current company, I should already be looking for opportunities that would help me gather those skills so that one day when I actually want to interview, I can tell those people that, oh, like these are some of the leadership activities that I've done. So always doing that research to actually understand like the career path that you want to be on, looking at other people as well. So there are people who I just like go to their profile. I'm like, it took her like 3 years to become like an engineering director after she became a senior manager. Okay, maybe it's possible. It took this person like 5 years. They took this course. These are some of the things that they've put out there that they've done. I try to like just understand even what other people who are sort of towing the path that I want to are doing so that I can replicate that myself. So do your research, read job ads, read company career blogs, look at other people's career journeys. Mentorship is a big one as well. So if there's someone who has already done it before you, no need to try and reinvent the wheel. Find people who are willing to give you their time. Sometimes you have to pay for it, especially when it's coaching. If you feel like you're at a point in your career where you can afford it, it's definitely worth the investment of being able. It's almost like a shortcut. I know I said like don't look for shortcuts, but like in terms of like problem solving, if you can get someone who is experienced to sort of show you the way, then I would recommend that you sort of, go that route through mentorship, through coaching. Another thing is through volunteering. So like you might read a lot and realize that, oh, maybe yeah, I like this career path. But when you're actually in it, you might find that, oh, there's some things I don't like, or there's some things that maybe I'm lacking, right? So if you volunteer to, let's say someone says, oh, I'm building this thing, I need people to like volunteer to do front end, back end, or even open source, right? open source, it can be as little as contributing even to documentation, reading their documentation, fixing bugs, um, finding people who are working together on a project and just saying, oh, I would volunteer some of my time just to sort of see and get a feel of if you actually like that career path. In my time in my career so far, I've sort of gone through different phases, and a lot of it has been like just trying to find like practical experience of would I actually like this thing. So when I got into DevOps, it was more like we need somebody to join this team. Are you willing to join the team? I don't know what DevOps is, but yeah, sure, I'll join. It was very new at the time. A lot of people were not doing a lot of things that you're hearing, like deployments and stuff. But for me, it was like this is an opportunity for me to actually learn and see if I like this thing. I liked it and I continued it. The point where I got into observability, I started hearing about it. I was like, okay, this is a thing. All right, I'm going to try it out. I started trying, different projects on my current team. And then I realized, oh, I actually like this thing. And then that became a thing that I've been doing for the past like maybe 4 or 5 years. And so being able to like try your hands out at things either through volunteering. If you're volunteering externally, that's fine. If you're volunteering within your company, that's also another thing that is really underrated. Like being able to just say that, oh, there's this project that nobody's really picking up. I would be the person to, contribute to it. It could do wonders for your career because you're getting hands-on experience, and it could be something that you end up being really good at, or it could be something that you actually eliminate from your list and say, oh yeah, project management is definitely not for me. I'm going to be able to like eliminate that and focus on other areas of my career and see, continue to try to see what works for me. Your career is pretty much like almost a lifelong journey. There's no need to like stay boxed into one thing. Just, be flexible in terms of like how you learn, how you sort of toe the path that you want to go along, with. And then finally, internships as well. So again, it's all about just trying to not just do your research, but also try and see if you can get some practical experience. Once you sort of understand the role, you now need to like set, clear goals. So using frameworks that make it easy to break down your goal. Here I refer to the 12-week goal, and I'll share the slides, when I'm done, because I have like links and stuff that you guys can follow. And the 12-week year is essentially just like breaking your year down into quarters and being able to like focus on what you want to achieve each quarter. So for Q1, if all I want to just do is find a mentor, like find an internship, I can focus on like, yeah, at the end of the year, sure, my goal is to get like an entry-level role. But like for Q1, I'm trying to find an internship and that's all I'm going to do. For Q2, I'm going to start talking to people, start going to events, start going to networking events or conferences and start reaching out to recruiters on LinkedIn. For Q3, I'm going to actually be in my interview phase. And hopefully by Q4, I would land, an interview. So being able to like set those clear goals that take you closer to, what you want to achieve. So for example, you guys are doing this mentorship now is a good example of, okay, I'm just going to focus on this now. And then next quarter, I'm going to be able to like start to focus on the next thing. So just using frameworks that make it easy for you to break down your goals, that make it clear what you want to achieve is just one way to sort of get closer to achieving your goals. And then you start to like build competency. So self-learning, you can do books, you can do online courses. There are communities you can join. You're already on one of those communities, which is great. You can find through mentorship and you can learn through practice. Learning through practice in tech is very, very key. Your practical experience is very different from what you've learned, from online courses. In fact, sometimes you're going through an online course and then you're facing errors that the course author themselves didn't face. And you're having to like, go and actually find solutions to that. So you shouldn't just be watching like, oh yeah, I'm retaining all of this. No, it's actually doing the hands-on practice as you're learning, as you're reading, as as you're volunteering. Just getting that hands-on practice is very key, especially when you're just starting out in tech. I like to advise people to like try to see something from start to finish. If you can get a project, set it up from scratch, it's a great way to learn rather than just like picking up projects that people have done. The reason why is because like you would face some types of problems that maybe those people have already crossed, right? But you are now just like actually walking through it. And by the time you're done with one project, you're like, okay, end to end, I know how to do this thing. It's really key because you never really know like where you're going to find yourself. You might find yourself in a company where their processes are already great and you can just come in and go with it. You might find yourself in a company where you have to start things from scratch. And if you don't have that experience, then that might be a problem for you, even though like you're actually for example, like a backend engineer or a software engineer. So being able to like learn through practice, look for projects that you can start from scratch, look for projects that you can contribute to is very important. So I'll say like before you think about anything about personal branding, about having an amazing CV, having, amazing interviews, the first thing is thinking about how do I build competency? How do I be employable so that people actually want to employ me? And it's not just like, oh, I'm going around like begging for jobs in a sense. So you've done all of that. The next thing is how do you put your best foot forward? And this is where we sort of talk about like LinkedIn, and we talk about CVs as well. Again, I'm coming back to this, like understanding the requirements of the role that you want to get is really important. Research is coming up again. If you're going to be in tech, you have to know that like tech like your dedication to tech or your interest in tech is saying that I have signed myself up for lifelong learning. I must continue learning and evolving. Like tech is not a career where you know something and you're great for the rest of your career. No. Technology is changing, trends are changing, the industry is changing. You have to always sort of commit to the fact that what was required of a software engineer like 5 years ago is not what is required of a software engineer now. When I started my career, nobody expected you to know anything about like deployments. But now, if you're interviewing, they're going to be asking you about DevOps practices, even if you're a backend engineer or a front-end engineer, even if you're not like the best person at it, you have to have an idea of how do I actually get my code from my laptop to wherever my customers are going to use it, right? So understand that like your career path is constantly evolving, and also that your career choices are different in different companies. So a company might want like a full stack engineer. A company might want just front end, just back end. So being able to actually say, okay, this role that I'm, trying to get, does my CV actually reflect what the industry is looking for is really important. Take note of the technical skills that are required. Assess yourself on the soft skills that are also described. So especially when you start to go to like mid to senior roles, they're looking for someone who has been involved in like coaching, mentorship, leadership on some level. It doesn't mean that you have to have led a team, but maybe you've led a small project, right? So being able to say, if somebody actually asked me today, based on this job description alone, am I actually qualified for this role is the first place to start. Another thing with like understanding the requirements of the role as well is, apart from even the skills, a lot of people now are looking for international jobs. Does this company sponsor visas? Is even the first question. Like, because when you apply for something and then you get a rejection immediately, it's very disheartening. But you have to be like honest with yourself to say, am I actually the one that sets myself up for failure? Right? Because, for example, if you see remotes and they say UK remote, it means you have to be in the UK. If you are applying from Nigeria, they are not going to take you. So there's no need to set up yourself for those types of, unfortunately, emails. So actually read the requirements of the role, even beyond, the technical skills, soft skills, especially when you start to look for like remote roles, international roles, actually understanding that I'm not going to get an interview if this role clearly says that they don't sponsor visas. There's no point to add that to my rejection quota. Let me just leave them and find the people who are willing to sponsor me, so that even for my own sanity and my own peace of mind is even the first thing, right? So understanding the requirements of the role, then you craft your CV. The world has moved past like you should be doing your CV from scratch. It's very stressful. First of all, use a simple template. A lot of the times when you apply for jobs, they use like what they call ATS, which is applicant tracking systems. And they're very strict gateways to getting an interview. So for you to even get like the first hurdle you're trying to cross is, let me even convince this ATS, who is not a human being, who is a machine, who is like yes or no, that I am actually qualified for this role. So for ATS, I would recommend that you use software like Resume Worded, Job Scan to actually tailor your CV to be an ATS friendly CV. What that means is that you're already increasing your chances of actually getting an interview. So I'll give an example, right? And like these tools are things that I've used personally in my job search. So like it's not hearsay. Like this, for example, like I think I applied to a job, I waited and waited, they didn't get back to me. I used resume worded, I worked on my CV and applied to that same job. And by the next day, I got an interview. So you have to understand that, like, sometimes, oh, it's not you, it's your CV. You have to understand that, like, you need to be putting your best foot forward, representing yourself, and your CV is usually the first, point of interaction with anyone who is going to hire you, right? A lot of the time. So use tools like JobScan. JobScan would actually take your CV and it would help, and it would compare to the job ad and say, do you actually, based on your CV, match this role? It will tell you, oh, like these types of words are used. So for example, like software engineer or backend engineer, or maybe React engineer is used, and those are not reflected in your CV. If you have the experience, all you have to do is actually change your CV to match that so that you increase your chances of getting a job, right? I would say like use tools like Canva because the format is already there. You just put in your format, right? So there's no point like spending hours and hours trying to, get the perfect CV, because the likelihood is that you can't actually get everything yourself. Like there are insights that these tools would help you with where it makes it easier for you, and you're even, you're sorry about that, you're more confident that you're applying for a role that you would most likely get, or at least get an interview, right? Once you've crafted your CV, I like to say like LinkedIn is your online, like your mini CV. Once I work on my CV, I try to reflect the changes that I've made. So there's some things that you need to pay attention to. So your headline on LinkedIn, your about summary on LinkedIn, those are really important. Use your input from your CV to represent your experiences on LinkedIn. So for example, if I say I've worked at Paystack and on my CV I have like 4 bullet points, I don't even bother myself trying to like reinvent the wheel. I just copy what's on my CV and put it on my LinkedIn. The other thing that you also need to do is use as many LinkedIn native features as possible. So when you're typing your role, so for example, like if you bring up DevOps, you would see that like it would suggest to you DevOps engineer, right? Just use what LinkedIn suggests. And the reason why is because recruiters are most likely searching by those terms. So recruiters will just go and say, from a drop-down box, give me DevOps engineers. If you put DevOps something else, you might not show up in that search, right? So you need to be able to like use skills and top skills. So LinkedIn now has like top skills that you can put on your profile, and skills even for down to every job. You're able to select the skills that are, that are relevant to that experience that you have. Those are the things that recruiters are searching by. Just whenever you see a feature on LinkedIn, to either select a skill, a role, just anything that represents your experience, as much as possible, use those LinkedIn native features so that you increase your chances of being found by a recruiter, right? Resume worded again is another tool. It would score your LinkedIn. It will give you tips on how to improve your LinkedIn. You can use ChatGPT to improve your headline, your summary. There is no point trying to do so many things yourself. Like craft your first draft and say, this is my experience. ChatGPT, create an about summary for me for LinkedIn. And in a few minutes, you have something that's meaningful. You have something that, recruiters will be able to find. There are many things that you can do on LinkedIn, like, writing and sharing about your experience, sharing your articles, interacting with other people's content and stuff is really good as well to give you some visibility on LinkedIn, especially when you're just looking for a role. But I didn't want to sort of focus this presentation on like the personal brand, because I think that that's a thing that's coming up a lot now. Like it's not just about building that personal brand. Again, the important thing is you have the skills to back up, whatever you're putting out there. So that's something that you need to have in mind. The final thing I would speak on when it comes to like putting your best foot forward is that referrals take you a step closer. Building meaningful connections, you can actually reach out to whenever you're looking for a job. It's really important within your company, outside of your company. It's important to like, connect with people in the industry, even if it's just like, it's not like you're connecting with them because one day they must do this favor for you, but you never really know where, someone might be working in a company, that you want to apply to in the future. And again, like I have examples, of some of these things where I recently applied to a job. I didn't pass through the ATS system. I reached out to someone in the company who I had actually just met. We had like a 5 minute conversation. It wasn't a big deal. It was unrelated to like looking for a job. And I said to the person, oh, hey, I applied for this job. I think I'm qualified for this role. I would really appreciate if you refer me. They referred me and I was able to get through the entire interview, pipeline. So again, you see where if one does not work out, you try the other, right? So that's why I would really like, one of the things I also try to do is like, if I'm going to apply for a job, I actually, if the recruiter's name is on there, I send the recruiter a message and I say, oh, hey, I think I'm qualified for this role. Would you, I would really love to like speak to you about what you're looking for and also, kind of see if everything aligns. Some of these things you might say, oh, like, you have experience and you might, that's why you have the confidence. But for some reason, I've always just felt like if I see something that I want, I would ask for it, especially when people are asking. Like when I started working at Paystack, or before I started working at Paystack, I literally saw a tweet saying, we're looking for engineers, da, 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 da. And I reached out to the person and said, I'm a female engineer. You can hire me. Like, this is my experience. I've worked with this. I've worked in DevOps. I've worked with teams, I've worked with interns. And so I'm happy to, do an interview if you're open to it. And that ended up being like one of the best, places that I've worked in, so far in my career. So definitely being able to like connect with people is another, like beyond just like submitting your CV for a job application is really important. So if you can connect to a recruiter, if you can connect to someone at the company, you can actually politely ask for like referrals or like recommendations, or say, I know people who would say, oh, I want to apply for this role. Would you mind giving me a referral, or would you mind looking at my CV? And sometimes you don't get responses, but sometimes you never know. So I would say don't be afraid to like make those connections, to ask for referrals, because the likelihood of when you get a referral that you get an interview is actually higher than if you actually apply through, the normal system, because recruiters would sort of prioritize people who are coming from, oh, like this person is already in the company and I'm saying this person might be a good fit for the company. I'm obviously going to prioritize that person, because I know that, okay, maybe the person has already assessed what the team needs, especially if it's on the same team where they're hiring for, assess what the team needs and seeing that person would probably fit into, the team perfectly or fit into the role perfectly. So referrals take you one step closer. Always keep that in mind. Even if you don't know someone at the company, especially on LinkedIn, if the recruiter's name is there, reach out to that recruiter and say, I think I'm qualified for this role. I would really love to talk to you. Or, I just want to chat with you about this opportunity. I sent in my CV, but, it would be amazing if we set up like a small meeting or just like have a small chat. Now we come to interviews. Interviews are all about communicating your value. A recruiter is looking for, does this person know how to do the job? Do I like this person? Do they feel like they would fit into the team and into the company well? So what you need to know, like going into an interview, is like, I'm coming to sell myself. I like to think about interviews as a presentation. As I'm making a presentation to you, obviously I've practiced, I've thought about what I'm going to say, I've put in time to like craft my CV that you're seeing on my screen today. And I'm coming to convince you that, okay, like I know what I'm talking about, and like this is why you should listen to me based on my experience and based on what I know, is essentially what interviews are. You're the subject of the presentation, right? Research. So again, interview is all about practicing. So research commonly ask questions and use input from what the recruiter tells you to sort of build up that skill of interviewing. My first two, funny enough, like I always remember my very first interview. It was honestly really terrible. But I remember like there was another interview I had like a few years down the line in my career. And I just remember that recently and I was like, wow, I was really, really bad at interviews, right? But honestly, like now I feel very confident about like interviews because I know how to like craft my experience based on like what they're looking for. If you're looking for like an engineering manager, I know like the experience that I have and I can explain, I can communicate to you that, oh, like this is what I can do. So you need to build up that confidence in communicating your value, right? And you only build up confidence by practicing. Anytime I have an interview, I just take like the job ad or I take what the recruiter has sent me and I ask ChatGPT, give me 15 questions, that would likely come up based on these topics. And I practice if there are four different categories, I practice that. That's 15 times 4. By the time I answer 60 questions to my mirror or to my husband, there's no question that you want to ask me that I cannot maneuver my way around, right? So it's really important to be able to like communicate that this is what I can do, this is what I know. And it takes skill, it takes refining that, to be able to say that, okay, I'm confident to go into this interview. Because the recruiter is not coming to like victimize you. They're coming to chat with you. They just want to understand that, okay, can you actually do the job, right? Another thing is like align your answers with like highlights of the job ad. Like if you, especially, and with the values of the company as well. So for example, if the company values transparency, there are things that you may have done and you want to be able to like not just highlight that technical thing, but oh, I was communicating with my team throughout. This is how I was able to like manage the stakeholders in the project. This is how I was transparent, so that they also see that not just that you have the technical skills, they also see that you have the cultural fit for the company. Because the teams are also looking for, they don't want somebody that is a superstar and is just going to come and disrupt the team. That's really not what people are looking for. They're actually sometimes like I think I was in an interview recently and my manager said this person feels like they're very used to working alone. They're good, but they're used to working alone and they might not want to, they sort of have this like hero mentality. You see that like you might be good, but like, can you work with the other people on your team? So you need to know like, what does this company actually value? Do they value, oh, like, okay, I want someone that is, oh, whatever it takes, they're going to do it. Or I want somebody that is going to like communicate with the team. If they already have things on their values like transparency, open communication, you already know that those are things that you need to be able to like explain in your interview, that aside from my technical skills, I can actually, demonstrate these other values that, matter to the company. And then prepare questions that are relevant to the interview. You want to be able to, if you're going in for like a technical interview, ask them about their tech stack, ask them how the team works, ask them like, what's the day-to-day of the team? How do they deploy? How do they manage? Show that you're actually interested in working on the team, not even just for the company, but for yourself. Because what if there's just one red flag for you, right? That you might end up not taking that job just because of that thing. So prepare questions that are relevant to the company. Read their blogs. I think I've jumped my next one. But essentially what I'm trying to say is like interviews are a two-way street. You're not just like interviewing for them to hire you. You're interviewing to see if you want to work there. Like sometimes like you have to also think about like you spend so much time at work that it's important to like, think about your mental health, your career. Like if you notice that, oh, this manager is already tending to a micromanager, can I deal with this? If I cannot deal with it, let me go and look for another person that will hire me, right? So show your curiosity about the team, show about their values, about your manager, your day-to-day work, about things that matter to you as a person, to be able to be happy in that role that you're doing. So it's really important to like prepare questions for yourself and also for the recruiters and the people that you're interviewing to see that you're actually even curious about working with the company. Like gone are the days where I know a lot of times like people say like interviews are, or job hunting is a numbers game. And for the most part, it's true. But it gets to a point where you start to be more intentional about your career, to the point where it's like, I should actually pick and choose where I work. I don't want to work in a toxic place. I don't want to work for a toxic boss. I don't want to work in a place where in fact, sometimes you factor in even the commute, because when I come home, am I going to be able to be like a functional human being? Or am I going to be so tired that like this job is going to consume my entire life and that is it, right? So again, interviews are a two-way street. Not only are you interviewing for a role, you're also interviewing the company to see that, do I even want to work here? Especially when you get to certain points in your career where you know that, okay, I built up my confidence, I've built up my skill level to the point where I can actually be a bit choosy, about, or I can actually be very choosy depending on where you are and how you feel about where I want to work. Especially when it starts coming to like even women, as a woman, you want somewhere where, for example, like maybe you have more time for your kids if you are, if you have kids, or you have more time to like just do other things outside of work. Like they just get to certain levels where you start to be a bit critical about where you're working. And interviews are the best place and the best stage for you to sort of be able to like, have this sort of conversations to actually gauge whether or not you want to work at the company. So yeah, I would definitely say like the three things, sort of the three stages that you're going through is becoming employable, knowing that you have the skills and you're a good fit for the company. The second thing is putting your best foot forward. And then when it comes to the the interview stage itself, it's communicating your value. The more you get better at communicating your value, the higher the chances are that like people are going to want to work with you and that people are going to want to like, give you a job. I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. I think I can probably like, I think Toby was supposed to say questions here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Please start sending in your questions. I left a couple of messages there. But while we wait for others, I don't know if you can see my screen. Or if you can
Okay.
see my face. No, no, I'm not sharing.
I can see your face, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I have some questions, well, for myself. So, um, okay, you mentioned ChatGPT quite a number of times. Okay, I have two questions. So the first one is you mentioned ChatGPT number of times. So I had this experience where I referred a couple of people to my company. They were recruiting, and then my manager, I just noticed that because there's a way I'm able to track people that I referred.
Yeah.
There's a way I can track it. So I noticed that all of them were rejected. And then when I probed in a little bit further, why is it because we are from Africa? Why? All of that. What I heard was that most of them use ChatGPT to answer the application question. So maybe I can give more context. So because the role was a junior role, they kind of
Mm.
asked questions around experience. We're expecting people to answer the questions so that they can have an idea of the kind of experience you have. Can we work with you and all of that?
Yeah.
Alas, almost all of them used ChatGPT to answer the question. They just copied and pasted, and
Yeah.
also using the same ChatGPT to it's so obvious that this person copied and pasted.
Yeah.
How do we use ChatGPT such that uh,
Yeah.
you are not cheating in code? So, in short, my manager just declined everything. He felt it
Yeah.
was. uh, And then my second question is about writing our CVs. I've seen a couple of conversations where people say it's not good for you to put your image, I mean your profile image in your
Yeah.
CV. I have been using my image on my CV for like 9 years now. There are points that the point we were trying to make was that because we can have some recruiters that are racist, kind of, especially when you are coming from a what was that term now? Non-inclusive. What was the terminology they usually give us? The blacks and then women. There, some recruiters are racist, and once they see that you are black, once they see you are a lady, they just decline, kind of.
Yeah.
So they always advise that you don't even put your image. What do you think about that? In my own opinion, it's better I know that I'm racist now,
Very racist, exactly.
and then you quickly decline my application than for me to get there and then you're looking at me
Yeah.
now. So what do you
Yeah.
think? Those are my two questions. Thank you.
All right. I would say like for the first case, like where you're sort of using ChatGPT to answer questions, I think the key for me is like if someone is trying to gauge your experience is very unique to the point where if you don't have the experience, is when you go and copy and paste exactly what ChatGPT says. I would always say like start with something, actually write something, or if you even like if I'm going to say, oh, I want to answer, for example, like this question where they say, do I have hands-on experience with like engineering management? I would say I'm an engineering manager. I have led 3 teams. I've worked in fintech. I've sort of started observability from the ground up here. I've scaled my teams to like from 2 to so and so engineers and tell ChatGPT like this is my experience. Craft a good summary for me. There's no how that another person would have my exact experience to the point where when they look at our two answers, it's the same. It is when you start to like concoct answers that you don't have the experience that it now starts to be generic, right? So if your problem is that your answer is generic, it's probably that you're not representing yourself properly. It's probably that you don't have the experience and you're representing yourself falsely, is even, the way to put it, which is why I said like the first thing is becoming employable, actually gauging yourself that do I have the skills that these people are looking for to be able to like answer and actually pass an interview? Not that, oh, I feel like I can do this work. Let me go and sometimes like your experience is not necessarily. So for example, if you're transitioning from a different career, you might be able to like relate your experience from that career to the new place that you're going. So it's not necessarily that you have like zero experience, but you actually have to think critically of like, what are these people looking for? And how can I answer? As long as it's not like they're asking you that, can you use Excel? And that's a yes or no question. But if they're asking you like, what's your experience with like managing a distinct team? I can say, oh, I don't have experience managing this team, but I have this experience. Essentially, they want to see if I can lead a team. It might not be that they are looking exactly for, oh, you have to have used this exact technology. There are some companies where they would hire you as a backend engineer. You use Java, but they're like, we use Python, but you can learn Python, right? So some companies are actually willing to take the existing skills that you have and work with it. So the main thing is like, how do I represent my existing skills? Is when you are trying to represent an ideal candidate that you are not, is where you now start to get those generic answers that everybody's answer is now the same. Because I don't see how you tell ChatGPT that this is my experience, edit it, and then it will give you a generic answer, right? The point of using ChatGPT is not to, as Tommy said, to cheat, but to aid and to, in a sense, like elevate your answer. So for example, like it might just even be like correcting grammatical errors. It might just be like the structures of your sentences, but it's not like the entire content is ChatGPT that will generate it for you. You go to ChatGPT with, this is my template, go and edit it for me, right? Is the way I would say like for that first one. So you have to be really careful of using AI where that you're not representing yourself in a false way by making sure that you're actually giving it information to work with, especially when you're trying to, answer questions about yourself or your experience. The second thing about using your picture, I've heard that, and I used to have my picture on my CV for a while, but especially when I started like applying for international jobs, I decided to like take it out just in case for whatever reason, like an ATS, it messes with the ATS, right? So that was why I took it out. If it's because like first of all, my name is Ibukun. I'm obviously not white. So if even if you for like if you are racist, you're obviously not good, you're going to discount me, right? In the first place. And so at that point, it doesn't even matter if I'm a woman or a man, right? So I would say, like you said, if you don't, I don't even want to work in a place where they don't even accept me. So if you're going to, reject me based on that, like that's completely fine. And that's your loss, especially if I'm qualified to do the role, right? So I don't use my image anymore. I used it for the longest time, to be honest. I don't use it anymore just in case it messes with the ATS system. But I don't think that because people might think that, they don't want to work with a woman or they don't want to work with a black person, they don't want to work with a minority. I don't think that that should be the reason why you take it out, right? If they don't want to work with you for those reasons and you're qualified, then I think that that's absolutely fine. I'm sure you'll be able to like find something else that works for you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have just like less than 8 minutes to end this session. So we have a couple of questions here. Maybe I'll go with this. The person says, "Hi, I'm Kazim. I interviewed for a role but was rejected at the final stage. Can I continue to reapply for that same role or other ones I'm qualified for in the same company? Or
Um,
can I chat up a different technical recruiter at the same company on LinkedIn to increase my chances?" One
yeah.
1 minute
Sorry,
answer.
okay. Okay. Can I
And
go? 1 minute answer.
yes,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yes.
I would definitely say you can talk to them and ask for feedback. Every time I'm in an interview, good or bad, I always want to know the feedback. And the reason why is like sometimes it's just there's another candidate that maybe is just like just has something slightly, has a slight advantage over you. Sometimes recruiters are actually like conscious enough to say, oh, this person is really good. I would refer them to another team,
Okay.
within the same company so that they don't lose that hire, but sometimes they're not. So it's fine to, talk to another person and also know what their policies are. So some companies will say, once you get rejected, you can't apply for another 6 months. But it doesn't hurt to ask for feedback. It doesn't hurt to talk to another recruiter. But I would say don't just apply blindly. Try to get some information before you, sort of apply again, just so that if there are also, things that you can take on and, sort of work on, you also have that context so that you don't just keep getting rejected.
Okay, thank you. So okay. Someone shares a question here saying, if you get a new job as a front end web engineer in React and you do more of mobile React Native at your current place of work, but you have a side gig where you are actually working on web development, should your CV have both jobs, especially if they have the same timeline? 30 seconds.
Yeah. So I would say if you're doing like a side gig, you can sort of represent it as maybe like freelance work. I think it's fine to represent your experience on there, especially when they're varying like, types of experience. Some you can represent as like volunteer work or, whatever, just to have those things, especially if you're going for like a full stack role, right? So if you're going for only front end, it might be fine. You might just want to represent that front end. But if you're going for like full stack and you need to be able to like represent your mobile, your front end and your back end skills, you should do that. Again, make sure that you're not in breach of your company's, sort of policies. So if they say, oh, you're not allowed to have a side gig, then that's a different question. But if there's nothing there and it's fine for you to have a side gig, then I think feel free to like represent those things. And also be able to like answer questions about why you're doing that as well, because recruiters will probably be asking about it. And if you find that like you're going and like, recruiters are asking about it constantly and they are sort of raising it as a red flag, then you can sort of adjust. But I would say, represent your experiences, especially if you're going for like a full stack role.
Okay, thank you. So Habe says, what those who that put age limit as part of their requirement, what do you say about that? Well, maybe to answer that, it's their job, it's their company. You can't force them to change what their requirement is. So you just have to abide by whatever they're expecting. So if your age exceeds what they are expecting, maybe you should not bother. I can't tell you to change your age so that it's get into that company. So I'll just take one more. Um, David Adediji says, you mentioned something about tailor what you talk about in doing an interview in relation to a job ad. Please, what about a situation where someone is referred without following a job ad template? And then
Okay.
also, how can the CV be well put to not appear generic in that case?
Yeah. I would say the first thing is always ask the recruiter before you enter an interview what the interview is going to be about, because that's the only way you can actually be fully prepared for what they're going to ask you. So they already know what they're going to ask. They've already arranged it, and they can give you some information and then you use that to practice. And I guess you should also ask your friend who referred you, they can send you the job ad because there's probably one, or they have some information that they can give you as well.
Okay. We have quite a number of questions. Sorry, because of time. Apologies, please.
There's someone whose like video is on and has their hand raised up. Maybe
Yes, Anya can please go ahead. You are the third person. Sorry about that. Anya can please go ahead.
I think you're muted.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you, I think. No. Oh, okay.
Okay. Maybe let me ask you to unmute.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, my question is quick one. I get a couple of recruiters, mostly US, on me, and I don't apply for them. Like because of I work for international company, and in the description I put like US there, and I'm very sure that when recruiters look for their ATS, they see me, and whenever I tell them that I'm in Nigeria, and their response is, "Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
we can't take because you're in Nigeria." So, what is always the best method to use, right, or the best answer to give them whenever I'm being chatted or I'm being called for an interview, and I tell them that I'm not in the US, I'm in Nigeria. So
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I would say like if you're interested in those roles, like have an open conversation. I don't think like lead with, oh, I'm in Nigeria, right? You never know who is going to like sponsor. So I think just be open, especially if it's a role that you might like. You never know, you might come across one who, ends up being able to like sponsor or have you work remotely. So just keep your options open. And if it comes down, down the line, then obviously you say, I'm happy to, I always like, even if I'm not in like interview mode and I'm not looking for a job, I always tell interviewers that, yeah, I'm happy to like keep in touch. If anything changes, I would reach out to you or, you reach out to me just to have those like communication lines open, in case, your situation changes or their own situation changes and they can actually hire in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you. Someone says, is it advisable to apply for foreign companies as a junior QA? Let me just answer. Yes, you can. Just apply all that she has said. Improve your CV. make sure you are qualified technically, and then of course present yourself, will apply, ensure that your application can get into the door. So yes, I'm not, of course, apply. Where I work, we have juniors. I've always worked with a couple of people that from Nigeria. We're working with an international organization. So yes, as long as they accept the role is a junior role, as long as they are accepting applications from Nigeria, of course, you can go ahead to apply. And as just like I mentioned, you are qualified, you meet the requirements. Someone says, do your years of experience combine your time at all places you've worked, even though some of the timelines overlap? Ibukun, do you understand the question? Like,
Yes. I wouldn't count like overlapping timelines. I would say like even if you're working two jobs at the same time, it's still the number of years, between when you started the career and like when you're, still at it. So I would sort of go with that.
yes, yes, thank you. Someone says, I am currently a software tester. However, I've done certification as a Scrum Master and project management, and I want to venture in Scrum Master. Please advise me better on what to do. I think she already covered a couple of things already in the beginning. She said volunteer, but probably we want to just 30
Yeah.
seconds.
So volunteer, find opportunities to practice, look at job, ads and see if you actually have those skills or you need to still build up more. And start applying as long as you're able to like tailor your CV, to those roles and represent those like skills that they're looking for on your CV. You might want to be able to like apply the experiences that you've had as a QA and sort of highlight how they applying to being like a scrum master or a scrum manager or project manager. But I think do your research, use those tools that I mentioned, job scan and resume worded. They will tell you if your CV is a good fit for that role that you're trying to apply for, and keep working on it until you have a good one and then go ahead and apply.
Okay, two more questions. Apologies, please. So that means we'll have to extend. We're hoping to end by 5:30, but I'm not sure we can do that because we've taken a lot of time already. Someone says, please, can you give some practical tips for networking in the tech field? And then someone says, there's an individual who secured an entry role as with ND, that's National Diploma. There are some courses there are some courses to improve is should getting a degree be priority at this stage or to upskill? So I don't
Okay.
know should
Yeah.
she go for a degree now or should she upskill? I feel you can do
Yeah.
both. Let's hear what.
Yeah, I think depending on where you are in your life, you can probably do both. But I think as tech is usually very, very like practical. They want to see like your hands-on skills. So that upskilling is actually like the most important one. But if you have time for a degree and you have the bandwidth for a degree, you can go ahead and get that. But there's a lot of like informal learning that you can do as well. But if one of your goals is to get a degree, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Sorry, what was the previous question?
Networking, how to do
Oh
that.
yeah. I think one, like look for events in your area. Like there are tools like or there are platforms like Eventbrite where you can see conferences that are happening in your own like specific space. If they're, for example, like if you use a specific tool and they have a conference, like go for their conference. Go for those conferences with a goal in mind. It might be that you're looking for a job, or it might just be like, oh, I want to get as many recruiters on my LinkedIn as possible. So you just go there, have a conversation with them, ask about their company, and ask if you can connect with them on LinkedIn. So depending on the goal that you have in mind, you sort of address like, especially because like companies are always like they always have like stands and stuff that you can go and speak to people. And it could just genuinely be like, I just want to connect with people, and you go there, hang around, see people who are attending the same, events or like the same, maybe like because they have like different sessions. So maybe the same session as you might just, start talking to someone and see, you can connect with them on LinkedIn. Informal places like Twitter as well. Twitter is a good place, especially in like Nigerian tech industry, to be able to just like find people in tech and connect with them and just interact with them. So there are different ways, but if you're going for conferences and stuff, always go with a goal in mind, just so you can get what you want out of that particular conference.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. We won't be taking more questions anymore. Please follow her on Comtech with us. She usually addresses a lot of tech-related questions, career questions, and all of that. So I advise that you follow that on Instagram, and then of course on LinkedIn. She shares a lot of videos, practical tips. So if you still have more questions, your questions were not answered, please reach out to her on Comtech with us. Thank you very much, Ibukun. We
Yeah,
really
thank you, Tommy.